we're going to be talking today about designing your food forest in a suburban situation. So my background is that I have created a food forest in the suburbs of Auckland in St. John's, and so it's a relatively small property. It's big for Auckland. It's a third of an acre. That's 1,400 square meters. And over the last 10 years, I've worked on it with my family to create a food forest, an edible garden. And I'd like to talk about how I designed it and created it from lawn with reference to the permaculture principles. So the slides will be divided a little bit amongst the permaculture principles. So I did my PDC, just a quick history, in 2019. And, ever since then, I knew I wanted to have a full food forest. And my project for my PDC was how to design it so that I could ultimately earn a living from it and an income, and with various income streams. So we can talk about, that over while we discuss it. So the first permaculture principle is observe and interact. So I spent a bit of time, just looking at doing the sector analysis, looking at the various the wind tunnels in the garden, and the hot spots and the boggy areas. And I really took the time to plan those, to do a base map and write lots of notes, and wanted to incorporate a lot of spaces where I could sit and observe in the food forest, because I tend to just, sometimes you just tend to race through with things on your mind and go and do something, but every now and then you've got to sit and observe, and just observe the garden, see what's going well, what you need to change. And so I have a diary that tells me make notes of what I must do next autumn, for instance, to make changes for the spring, and a bit of a yearly planner, and just to help me to decide, just to help me decide. And another good thing is to consider your goals when you're planning your food forest. Like, for instance, be quite specific. Like, my specific goals was that I wanted to provide fruit all year round, enough different kinds of fruit in the 52 weeks of the year. So I was thinking about the different kinds of citruses and plums and things that overlap each other in the harvest times. Yeah, and also think about your time management. How much time do you actually intend to spend there? In there, and think about the time-saving things that you can incorporate in your garden and your family needs in that. So I'll go on to the next one. So when I designed my food forest, I wanted to catch a lot of water. In Auckland, we have a 3-month drought, practically, from January, February, March. So leading up to that, I wanted to collect as much as water as possible. So I've got this on my roof, rainwater collection on the house, and even on the chicken coop there, just simple, leading into an old into a bin. And I'm using that bin. That's got a little tiny hole in the bottom, so that constantly leaks into an area where I've got Vietnamese mint growing and other things that a little bit of dampness. And catching and storing energy. I've got lots of fruit trees and neighboring trees, and then so I collect all their mulch, and then that goes directly into my pathways. I use leaf mulch pathways, and that's great because then you've got it slowly decomposes. It's like a carbon store in your pathways, and it's easy to keep weed free. And and I just top it up occasionally from my constant supply of mulch. capturing and storing energy. Yes, so that's a great example. You can, in this case, you can see that I've another way of capturing energy of enthusiastic workers and helpers work. In the case of working bees and permablitzers. So, so not only the obvious things like catching rainwater and mulch, just catching and storing energy of other people. And expertise, constantly learning about new skills and building up your expertise. Because when you have a food forest, you'll certainly learn to enjoy a lot of new skills like pruning and beekeeping and keeping chickens. And then you can, if you've got excess fruit, just preserving it in some way, dehydrating it, or and then that's sort of storing your energy for winter use when you haven't got certain veggies. That's what they're doing. Here, yeah. Well, I've got a group of friends, a group of people all coming together to build a herb spiral. Yeah, so that was a project on a garden I helped design, turning a lawn into a edible food forest as well. And then we had basically a working bee, 2 days of permablitz. And then we captured the energy of all those people that were designing that the herb spiral. Obtaining a yield. So, you can consider the obvious things like obtaining your yields of produce, preserves, but also consider in your food forests the yield of other things too. So many plants, flowers for the pollinators and for your beneficial insects for pest control. And obtaining a yield could be a little bit more esoteric, like for instance your enjoyment, and it's just your place to relax and the place to meet family and friends. And in my case, I wanted to have it as a place of providing, giving back to the community by doing workshops. So I do regular workshops, plants for sale, seed swaps in my neighborhood, and that's all part of the yields that you can consider, and that's just makes all part of the enjoyment of producing produce in your food forest. In my particular food forest, I've got early peaches. Those are Orion peaches, which I got from Koanga Institute. Is a bare root plant. It's amazing because it looks like this now in November, December, and even which is unusual in Auckland, but it's great because you can you get your yield of peaches before the humidity causes brown rot and stuff like that, problems. I'd never done preserving until I had a food forest. So I'm enjoying doing all this. This is, for an example, that's cherry guavas, making lovely jellies. And then that's feijoas and persimmons, just all canned in jars. Or especially with some of those fruits that are just last a couple of months, and then you still got those in your pantry, over the winter. Applying self-regulation and accepting feedback. Well, sometimes, yeah, that's important. What did I do in my food? I decided I wanted to make everything out of recycled materials, and just try not to buy everything. Before my very first chicken coop, I made the mistake of buying everything, from Bunnings. Plywood and all the stuff, and it costs, I don't know, $150. And then, but even so, it quickly, it all just disintegrated and everything. But this one it was all from recycled materials. I thought, I'm not going to buy a thing. Actually, what I did buy, it actually cost $20 for the stainless steel hinges. And so that's just all, there's pallets there, and that's a corrugated iron roof that I bartered with someone for eggs. and that's the replacement siding from our house. And so that was my self-regulation. Just use everything, you know, upcycling or recycled, and that's there. And that you can do that for your beds and your coops and your pathways and for everything. Also, I wanted to, a simple thing was I found that I had to regulate the actions of the chickens. So my chickens here are going through I made a chicken tunnel. So there's a 10-meter chicken tunnel from the coop to my zone 4 area, which is like a meadow. So at certain times of the year when I've got, seedlings out and doing a bit of introducing small plants and things, I don't want the chickens going and then marauding everything because they're so distractive. So then I regulate them, and they're in supervised visits to the back of the garden. Well, I've got 5 chickens. Yeah, so in the suburbs, you can, in our particular suburb, you can have 6. No rooster, but 5 brown shavers is still a bit much, really. They're still quite destructive. So I think next time either I'm going to have only 3 or stick to 3, or maybe 5 smaller ones, like silkies or something that aren't quite so marauding as brown shavers. Yeah. Oh, actually, that's just well, that's actually just a roll of somebody's leftover that they were making their rabbit hutch. It's just wire netting. But what is? Oh no, that's just a bent. That's an aluminium frame. Yeah, it's just an aluminium pipe. It was actually from an old what do you call it? TV aerial. You know how they're made of aluminium frames. So I just bent it to force that into a arc shape. Otherwise, yeah, and just stuck that into the ground. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Well, actually, that chicken tunnel is permanent. It's along my boundary. Yeah. So it's a permanent position. But sometimes, I can, and so I can herd them there. But otherwise, I'll just bring them in a semi-enclosed closed space, like around a particular tree under an apple tree, and then they can pick around there and weed there, pick all the overwintering codlin moths, stuff like that, and sometimes yes, because my garden's set in a series of kind of rooms, and yes, and that's another part of when you're sort of self-regulating yourself. Just check I have to sometimes step back and remind myself of what the big picture is, what my original plans were, and then and those are my plans. Yeah, sort of, and I note where always noting on my base plan where the fruit trees and things like that, and how they're doing, and just if something is not working, being willing to make a change, and applying your feedback, and be willing to make a change. Especially because your food forest is sort of a live system, so using and value renewable resources and services. So there's lots of opportunities to do that when you're thinking about designing your food forest. And so just including a lot of pollinating plants. That's a photo from my kind of meadow area. I've got a meadow area. And so that's encouraging all those beneficial insects, which will do the renewable service of pest control, because attracting all those. Yeah, so that's a good idea of a renewable service. And the resources, I've always got prunings. These are prunings of a Tagasasti tree. And so I've just you get nice long curved branches. So I just sort of dry those, or I just or curve them, and then I use that all in trellising. Those are my prunings from a tree that was on the bough. It was actually damaged by Cyclone Gabriel, so I had to cut that one down, and now it's going to be used for firewood. And you'll learn to, and I really enjoy collecting seeds. the seeds from all the different plants. There's amaranth there, the sunflowers, all those seeds, and then you label those. All the seeds are here, so all examples from my own food forest, and that really saves you a lot of money. And also, it's like heritage. You're saving your own heritage seeds. And this is what I love doing as well. I'm a bit of a maniac with taking cuttings. So just, recycling all those pots, yogurt pots, meat trays, and then just sometimes taking cuttings seems like always a little bit of a skill, doesn't it? But you quickly get the hang of that, and you can apply a skill of taking a cutting to a lot of different plants. And then you just take lots, so you get a good percentage of successes. And it's very satisfying to grow your own plants, especially all your herbaceous perennials. And you'll find that it becomes easier and easier with time. And then, and sometimes, and for instance, using bamboo. So I've got a bamboo trellis. I've got bamboo on the property as well, on the border, and and some people would have thought, oh, you have to remove that, but I've just keep that in control, and that's great for providing renewable stakes. And then, and depending on where you put your trellises, you can provide that's also for shelter, for providing a bit of shade, or especially in your garden for some plants that like a bit of extra shade, your greens. And I've got one trellis on one side of the greenhouse, so when the beans grow in the height of summer, that'll provide a bit of shade in the plastic kennel house. Produce no waste. So that's you can find so many uses for pellets. So there's one I designed for a friend of mine. She that's just a pellet. That's actually one of the hardwood pellets that you can. Is an industry down the road had all of them on the street, and they weren't treated. They were all pressure treated, so they made really nice benches and things like that. And yeah, I think it's a hardwood because they came from Asia. Yeah, yes, because well, and rather than all going into they're all on the side of the road, about to be burnt. Yeah, it was a real shame. So I thought, well, I'll use those, and these will last. And they're inside, and they're just beautiful, red colours. But really value those pellets rather than having them burnt or just, rotted away. And here's an example. This is interesting. I learned about this recently. That's called a dead hedge. So I've got a couple of stakes in there, and then because I have a lot of prunings, and for a couple of Nico palms on my property, and they just shedding constant panga ferns, big leaves, and so creating a dead hedge, it's great. It creates a habitat, and also there's one wall of an enclosure for the chickens. Yeah, and it's just and it slowly decomposes as you add to it, and so that's really recycling stuff. I love to put little piles of things somewhere, and there's nothing like an insect hotel made out of natural materials, and especially when you have piles of different sizes of sticks, like they're prunings, so you either use them for firewood, or and they slowly decompose. And underneath piles like that, you find it's always moist, always the best soil is under there, and so it's and you can create a hugel as well, which is where hugel bed, where you have all those prunings lying there, but then you cover them with layers of compost and in layers. And I've done a few of those, and over time they slowly decompose, and that's just a real, like a long-term release of nutrients and carbon into your garden. And our street has got a neighbourhood chat, so they always know that I'm on the lookout for stuff. So this is all like pavings and the bricks. People are dismantling their patios. People are it's making changes to their landscaping, so they know they can give me the stuff, and either I use it or I share it out to other people that I know, or always looking for stuff. rather than going on the tip, you know. And here's another example, actually. This is crushed concrete. This is one of my trials and project. Recently discovered crushed concrete. And you can buy that by the ton. It's quite cheap by the ton, about $20, $30 cubic meter. But unfortunately, the delivery cost is very expensive. So, but it's great. In this case, it's a substrate for a greenhouse, or a glass house there, or you can use it as a pathway. And I'm using it actually, I'm experimenting with using it as a mulch for a certain part of my garden, which is basically heavy clay, Auckland clay. But I have trouble growing things like, say, for instance, I don't know, rosemaries and sages and thymes because of the heavy clay. So in one part, I've made a kind of a Mediterranean bed, and that's made out of crushed concrete. And so that makes it does make it, you know, I've done a bit of research. It doesn't seem to be any toxins or anything like that, but it will provide a more alkaline environment. Yeah, but it's great. So, and then it's only about 5 centimeters deep for a mulch, and underneath is your clay. But it's ideal for things that don't like to have wet feet. Yeah. So, oops, I'll better put that one. Design from patterns to details. Oh yeah, so there's my, so I really love circular designs. So I incorporated a lot in my garden, and my pathways. So in my garden, I've got a series of landing spots. I call them landing spots, and they're sort of 2 or 3 meter across patios. In fact, there's one there. One is made out of crushed concrete from somebody's driveway. There's an example, not crushed concrete, broken concrete from my neighbour's driveway. So we're just going to get it thrown out. So I took it and made a patio, and then all my pathways sort of lead to it. You know, but you can consider so many like mandala shapes, keyhole beds, and just think about those when you're designing your food forest, because one of the early things which I learned is think about your pathways in your food forest. They're important, you know, your pathways take the path of least resistance. And then especially if you're using a wheelbarrow, you know, you might want some winding pathways, but you always go through the key, you take shortcuts through the desire lines, isn't it? And then and think about your pathways for access to your fruit and around the backs of things for maintenance. So, so my pathways of mulch are, you know, about 80 centimeters wide, and you'll. So that's one of the important things. So from here, I've got one, two, three, 4 different pathways going to that spiral, and then the other patio, I've got also several different pathways. And also the locations of your zones, your zones sort of in concentric circles. It doesn't have to be in concentric circles. So just where your zones are nearest to your back door and that sort of thing. And I'm fortunate enough to have a bit of a wild zone 4, which is, you know, because of the space, I've got a bit of a wild zone at the edges where it's just like a, I call it, it's a rain garden actually, because it's that part of the garden is in a flood zone in Auckland, so it was in an old gully, and so I turned it into a rain garden with mainly mulch and native plantings, and where the chickens can go in, and then and that absorbed, for instance, in Cyclone Gabriel, we had no flooding because it's just absorbed all the excess water. So yeah, thinking about your zones, and you can even go beyond your food forest. Like I know where my food forest is very close to Pauriwa nurseries, the Ngāti Whātua or Orake marae and nurseries are very close to my area. So, and also St. John's, Selwyn Bush Reserve. So I was trying to think of it as being a part of that greater, in the bioregion, that greater circle of wildlife corridor, bird corridor, and insects. But also think of patterns of your own energy levels, you know, and your family, and and the seasons, and what you're going to be doing throughout the year. So it's good to think about it in the bigger picture as well. Integrating rather than segregating. So I obviously immediately comes to mind as animals, small animals. So I've got chickens in their coop, but I like to let them, forage around free range as much as possible. And they're great because they're insect pickers and everything like that, insect foragers, and I use their manure, and they provide eggs. And Amanda, my friend Amanda, she's got beehives, so that's great to, and I saw the beehives at Mika's property yesterday on the tour. Well, it's great. I've been on a beehive course, but I haven't, got around to I think that will take a little bit much time for me actually to do that. And I know people, Amanda in particular, she's got guinea pigs. So she's got a little bit of grass area left. So she's got her guinea pig lawnmower. And it provides her also with a lot of entertainment and a lot of fun. Little guinea pigs, they're so cute, a lot of pleasure, and they give her a little service as well. And integrating, polycropping. I learned from OMG, which is the Organic Market Gardens in Auckland. They're great. They're great with polycropping, aren't they? And I really redesigned my vegetable beds along their system with a central trellis, and just polycropping with rows and succession planting. That's when it's the opposite of monoculture. So you've got, for instance, in my beds, I've got the central trellis with all your either broad beans and peas in winter, or your cucumbers and your summer beans in summer. And then you have your large, longer lasting crops like your brassica dotted along the front of them. Their beds are about 1 or 1.2 meters. And then all in between those, you have the cut and come again fruit, like for instance the lettuces, and your spinaches and your things that they grow up quickly and they get used up, and then when they're gone they provide more space for those brassicas to grow out. But in the meantime, you've used the small spaces in between. And in the front, I lined up all your things that you like, the things that don't take much space. For instance, the carrots and spring onions. They can all line up the front. So you've got a lot of different veggies in your garden, and that helps to. There's a lot of good reasons for that, because veggie, when you're planting a little bit more intensively, that's so much better for the soil, and for also confusing pests, rather than amassing all your plants together. And I try and integrate a few plants actually into my vegetables, into my food forest, but I have problems with it. They tend to get lost in there a lot, but I sometimes put the perennial ones in there. For instance, like the what can I say, like the yacons. They're happy in the food forest. Also the artichokes and fennel, yeah. But a couple of times I made the mistake of putting things like Egyptian walking onions in there, but they got lost, completely lost. And I knew I had them in there somewhere, but I don't know where they wandered off to. And a few other things. And also some things need more light, and I also don't tend to put my beans and grapes in the food forest, because they need to be, one, really accessible, and two, a lot of light. But I do happily put things like, let nasturtiums grow, and cocos and things, integrating those. And integrating all the 7 layers of your food forest. Integrating techniques. I like to experiment. See, there's an example of a biodynamic method. I haven't fully gone into biodynamics, but I just love experimenting with the different methods, the preparations and the biodynamic, the compost, the cow manure pit, and that sort of thing. And then it's great to try different methods and see what suits you the most. Even integrating different growing techniques like containers or raised beds or a bit of and using if space is at a premium, you don't have to have a separate compost bin. You could compost in situ, and there you've got those just made out of rolls of of plastic netting or even rolls or anything, or you can just put with bamboo stakes a meter diameter instant little cage for your compost bin, and then you can move those yearly to go underneath a different fruit tree every year. And that's great because once again the best soil is underneath your fruit trees, underneath your compost bin, and then your fruit tree really gets a boost by having its own compost bin for a year, for the season. Or you can, and I know I've seen examples of people use their pathway as a compost bin, so they're constantly walking over it, and then that acts as a good carbon sink and a food sink and a moisture sink for the beds next to it. So there's many ways that you can integrate. At one stage, my food forest, I realized I was concentrating so much on greenery. I hardly had any flowers. So this year I've really concentrated on learning how to grow perennial flowers, and that's just made a big difference in the amount of bees, butterflies, so present and for your pollination of your various fruit. Use small and slow solutions. So sometimes it's a bit daunting when you've got your empty, your lawn, and then you're wondering where shall I start? But you don't have to start with the big picture like a fully designed project or like a master plan. I know some people do, but my food forest grew organically from the first just one mulched area around one fruit tree, and then planted that up when I learned about guild planting and companion planting and under each tree, and then I joined all the guilds together, slowly joined them all together. And we also had a lot of kikuyu in our lawn in Auckland, so at one stage I was digging it out, and the option was rototilling as well, vast swathes of it at once. But I decided on the low energy but slower method of either solarizing it or just covering it with mulch, lasagna sheet mulching. And then, what I did was I tended to, first of all, I mowed the kikuyu or cut it, and then I just laid all the grass on top. Then I put a bit of compost on, cardboard, wet the cardboard, wet it really well, and then more compost, and then mulch on top. And then, sure enough, it shades out your kikuyu, kills it off, and you can actually smell it decomposing. When you're digging into it, you could smell it starts to decompose underneath all that mulch. And with mulch could be anything, all your autumn leaves. It could be seaweed from your nearby beach. It could be lawn clippings from your neighbour. But I used all the prunings from my neighbour's trees and my own compost. And
real quick, did you talk about the pruning? Did you really chop it down quite a bit before you put it in there, like put it through a chipper, or did you?
Well, fortunately, when the neighbours had their trees pruned, they had the mulcher. They had a mulcher, so and I knew they were going to take it off to the local, the green waste, or to often they just dump it, but I intercepted them and swapped some organic eggs and for them to back up to my driveway and dump it all in my driveway. But and quite often nowadays you can quite often talk to your local arborist and get and they're happy to give you mulch. But it costs about $3,000 for a mulcher. You can buy your own mulcher, hence ones, and some people have got them, or you can borrow somebody, hire it. But generally it has to be mulched pretty small. Yeah, and you don't have to mulch it all at once. You can do it in strips. That's what I tended to do. I mulched, so you can see that's unmulched, and I just mulched it in sections as you over the years. That's why it could take a few seasons, a few years to build up your food forest, if you do it, the small and slow way. Another way is you're raising seedlings. I love to. I really, it's a nice skill to learn. Being, it's something that you have to be ever present for. You have to look at them daily, but it's so satisfying raising your own things. Some things like you. Sometimes I buy the first brassicas of the year to get them started, the seedlings from my local nursery, but I always continue to succession sowing, and that's really a useful skill to learn to populate your food forest. Value and using diversity. So really using all your 7 layers in your food forest. The first book I ever got was Kay Baxter's book, Design Your Own Food Forest, from Kawanga Nurseries, and it was so fascinating. That really got me started, and about how to use all your 7 layers. In the suburbs, I don't particularly have a canopy layer though, but I'm sort of borrowing the neighbours. Fortunately, their canopy is their tall trees are on the south side, but which is good as a bit of a windbreak for me. And but you need all those many layers as possible, 7 layers, to maintain your nutrient cycle and to keep the systems going, and to really start to begin to build your soil so that you import less and less fertilizer after your initial soil amendment. And then you can just maintain everything from your own garden. Diversity of functions, like your nitrogen fixes. Kay Baxter suggests, she says, it says 40% of your canopy should be leguminous plants, and for every fruit tree you should have a few leguminous plants planted to the side of it, including Togosasti, although they can be a bit large in the suburbs, but all your your Siberian peas and your what else? Lupins and broad beans, all that. Yes, yeah, and broad beans and clovers and things like that as a mulch. That really helps as well. And your biomass. I've got, a lot of plants grow very quickly. Like, for instance, what's a good one? Tithonia, and some other ones bananas, for instance. You've always got a lot of, once they fruited, you suddenly got a lot of biomass, and they're all good to fill into to either chop and drop or put in your compost bins. And always, you don't have to, import or export many things after you've got your food forest system going. And diverse nutrient sources. I like to experiment with different different brews, either seaweed brew, comfrey tea, things like with a bit of garlic crushed into it, that helps with the pest control, the snails and slugs, and just so that you've always got a diversity of crops and insects. There's nothing better than walking around your garden and foraging for your breakfast in the morning, and getting a couple of strawberries and a Rainbow Valley pawpaw that has ripened, and a few cherry guavas and some other berries, or making a salad, and much to my husband's dismay, or ending up putting so many flowers in it, things like that. And then you can make whole salads with green salad with not one lettuce leaf. You put such a variety of other leaves to put in edible things. It's just really, really satisfying to do that. and one of my goals was to have a diversity of income streams from my workshop. So I create, as well as having workshops, I also do a bit of garden, it's a garden consultation and edible garden designs. I do, I grow lots of, propagate lots of plants to sell plants for people and seedlings as well. I do garden mentoring, so which is just I find if I can't garden in my own, well, after I've gardened in my own garden, there's nothing nicer than helping other people, fast tracking their learning and helping them create their own gardens. And and I like to, in my own particular food forest, I also like to create stuff. I make bird boxes, rustic bird boxes out of pellets and things and all the leftover materials. And yeah, it's a good opportunity to diversify where you can. Using edges and value the marginal. So I've got a big wide driveways, and so that acts as a really good heat sink. That's the hottest part of the garden there. So I've got pomegranates there, and what else there? I've got that looks like so there's a lime there, and as well as a whole variety of other things. Bay tree, jar at the back there, cherry guavas, wormwood, and as well as all these the flaxes, and there's a citrus hedge there, and olive trees over here. So some things, especially like the pomegranate, that needs a long hot summer to ripen the fruit. That's a really it's good to consider at the edge of a driveway. Yes, I have. Yes, pomegranates. Yes, I'm very pleased. I like to show those off. Yes, and nice red fruit too. Big, that actually ripens well. Yes, I freeze those. And then they're ideal, just lovely. And the edges. Yeah, the only thing is that it is actually between two driveways, the neighbour's driveway as well. So it's a bit, the soil was very poor quality, full of urbanite, concrete and junk and stuff. So I really had to work with compost to really build up that soil, and ground covers and living mulch, just to create to build up that soil. Yes. Yes, we have clay soil, like a high percentage of Auckland has got that heavy clay soil, and also because in a lot of suburbs, the topsoil has been scraped off or backfilled. So yeah, so it's the good thing in a food forest situation, you can quickly build that up, and I don't dig into the soil, but sometimes I fork it a little bit, just if I'm making a new bed, before I put the sheet mulch on, I just fork it a little, just to open it up a little bit, and that allows the moisture, the air, the compost, any amendments you need to put on after you've done a soil test, just to integrate a bit, infiltrate a bit more, and then over time we'll do the rest. Do I do that? I don't actually. No, I don't. Yeah. Yes. Yes. That's my next project. That's right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, and so, and another thing we had was within the last year, rather unexpectedly, the neighbours did a huge development next door and put in this is a retaining wall. That's a retaining wall up to here, and then a big fence up to there. So that is going to be quickly covered with with lots of the nasturtiums has got up there straight away. But in summer, that's it's a great place to use it. When the neighbours look over the fence, it'll be completely covered with stuff. Maybe I might put hops up there. That's actually a sculpture there. I just made a sculpture there, so just out of prunings, and so there's a lot of ways. Yes, a lot of ways to solution, of an unsightly problem. Yeah. The only thing, of course, it is actually, of course, heavily treated because it's those massive telephone poles, you know. So I may not put food-bearing plants there, but it'll just be, and it's north-facing, and so it's quite a bit of a sun trap there. And then you can use all the edges of your beds, of course, put trellises on your beds, and in my particular, I'm great friends with my neighbours, so we've pulled down our boundaries and we've put up trellises, so we're sharing all our passion fruit and the beans and that, and yeah, we're sort of sharing our food, and so I've done that on one side with the lovely neighbours. Might be a bit more of a challenge to do with those neighbours. 10 minutes? Thank you. Thanks, Alex. And then also the marginal can also be thinking about marginal plants. This is a plantain, and which is often a weed, you know, especially in a lawn. You want to mow that down, but it takes on a new purpose when it's through a permaculture lens, doesn't it? And so valuing your marginal plant that are on the marginal side of being edible, you know, so weeds, and they all have their uses, medicinal uses as well. Creatively using and responding to change. So that was expect the unexpected. So just before that development next door, this is what happened. I had my food forest, part of it, the corner, was completely destroyed. 3-meter trench, as they had to fix, you know, join into the assets, the pipes, the stormwater drain under my property. But it wasn't completely unexpected, but it was perhaps a bit more destruction than I expected. So what happened then was, see, you could see all the clay. It's all cool, heavy clay, all the clay. So, but what happened then? I thought, oh well, I'll turn that into a solution, and it was all backfilled with like coarse base, and I asked them to replace it with, you know, with topsoil from another part of Auckland. And then so that became, and then so that's now my the meadow actually. So it became a new blank canvas, and I turned that into a meadow. And but you have to, you know, sometimes those things will happen. Sometimes suddenly, like in a forest, suddenly a clearing will occur, and then the best kind of things happens on the edges, isn't it? And then, so there's me pruning. That's something where you have to, when you're constantly interacting with your fruit trees, when they get too big, and especially when they're young, you can train them exactly how you want. And then I saw some wonderful examples of espaliering. That's a new thing I'm going to learn after looking at all these espaliers yesterday. And I thought I would also do get a little tunnel house so that I can use the the edges of the seasons a bit better. Maybe provide a longer growing period for some plants. And then so it's you have to, like, for instance, as the climate changes, then you might have to think about changing more, adding more food, more water tanks, changing your species to deal with less rain or more humidity, whatever's going to happen. Oh, and my final slide. So this is an example of how you can. This is an example of a garden I was involved with designing. So Amanda Warren did the garden design, and I did the planting plan. So that was before it was lawn. So this was in April. The client already had a permaculture kind of pyramid, but it was just lawn, car park, one big ash tree in the middle, and that was her vegetable garden there. That was all she was growing stuff in. And then, I work with a team called Gift the Garden, and we transform traditional gardens into edible gardens using permaculture methods. And so we did this is where we did the permablitz. And 2 days after the design and the fire approval of the plan, we went in and did the sheet mulching, the construction of a the client wanted a meditation pyramid, and some and things like that, and what else, and the mini glass house. Within 2 months we did that. We covered all the kikuyu. We didn't even remove the turf because it was too wet to remove the turf. We just sheet mulched over all of it, and you know, with cardboard, garden mix, and mulch.
That's where you got the cardboard from?
Oh well, in town we have like Bunnings, Martin, and they allow you to go into their cardboard recycling and pick it all up. It was about 200 square meters. Yeah. Yeah, and there was a central, there ended up being a central, you can't see it, but there is a little bit of a central lawn. But yeah, we had so much cardboard, you know, where they wrap all their appliances. All that cardboard was used. We picked it up and picked it up. Very little. It was very little, actually, surprisingly little. We overlapped the cardboard well, overlapped it, wet it, and very little. It's quite amazing. Just a few, just even in my own garden, a few little things come through, but you just pull them out, and very surprisingly little, and it just seems to decompose underneath. And then within a year, although that photo was only taken recently, look, that's the same photo. You can tell because that's the ash tree, and that's the ash tree again. Unrecognizable, isn't it? You can't even see the fence behind there. She's got the client had crushed concrete pathways, and this is also the same. See, you can see the pyramid there, and the pyramid there. It doesn't look completely different. Within a year, it was completely transformed into an edible permaculture food forest in the suburbs.